So, human beings can be very frustrating creatures to engage with because they have this nasty little tendency to search for information that they might agree with, find it intelligent or reasonable, then they stop believing it, and the internet algorithms will feed them more information that is along the lines of what they just read, and they believe with absolute certainty that the first information was true, ergo everything preceding that sort of relates to that same realm is probably also true, and then you fall down into these rabbit holes going deeper and deeper and deeper, whether you're talking about politics or conspiracy theories or just general beliefs about humans and races and cultures. They say that we become what we search for, we read, or what we expose ourselves to. So if you're constantly exposing yourselves to the negative things happening in the world, you're going to be thinking about the negative things that happen to the world and think the world's a dangerous place. But if you're constantly thinking about the positive things in the world, you're going to be searching for information that's positive and thinking that the world's a wonderful place. Or if you think it's just a miserable thing, you're going to search for miserable things and find information to confirm that, and etc., etc. Or one of the most recent fads is searching for information to confirm why you're a bad person and feeling bad because you found information that confirms your biases, and then you attach labels to it, and like, oh, I'm this certain level of depressive, or I'm completely disassociated with society and individuals, and now I have names for this and titles, and now I can attach myself to those and have that become a part of my identity. And it can be very frustrating because when we get entrenched into a singular way of thinking, it prevents us from evolving into better versions of ourselves, as well as listening to our counterparts around us. Now, it's not to say that, your beliefs are necessarily wrong, but not even having the slightest inkling of curiosity to hear the thoughts of your counterparts, the people who may be thinking differently than you, then that would be a major red flag across the board. Because if you're not challenging what you believe, finding the middle ground, because if you're always looking at the good, you're going to be missing the bad. And if you're always looking at the bad, you're going to be missing the good. But there is a middle ground. That's why they call individuals who are in the middle centrists, at least politically. Unfortunately, more often than not in today's society, we're trying to create an outrage culture where it feels like an us against them mentality. So if you have somebody trying to come in that's trying to say, hey, let's befriend each side and work together to build a society that'll make the world a better place, where we're not solely determining the quality of life based upon single metrics, which is, the GDP in the United States. But we don't need to talk about that because that would be a much longer rant. So the general point I'm trying to make here is because, the reason I'm going on this rant is because Andrew Yang was running for mayor of New York City. He got a lot of media coverage, a lot of negative media coverage that absolutely, what would you call it, demolished anything that he said that could have been taken the wrong way, despite there being significantly worse things said by other candidates, plus their history. But for some reason, focusing on Andrew Yang, an individual who's trying to abolish poverty and get us ready for the next revolution of technology, so that when AI and robots take over half of our jobs, we'll be prepared. That individual, instead they focus on his bodega comments, or his Times Square comments, or his Israel comments, or anything that doesn't have anything to do with the mayoral race or his mentally ill comments, even though that was clearly contextualized against a paper where they said that half of all Asian American attacks in New York City were by individuals with a history of mental illness, like schizophrenia, or things that have them lash out. So referencing that in the context of a debate, it kind of makes sense. But because individuals like to chop clips and then make things seem much worse and say, oh, he hates the mentally ill, oh, that's terrible, even though he wanted to help them by getting more beds and shelters for them to be put into, so that they can actually get the treatment and health and care that they needed, it becomes very strange. But it's frustrating because this outrage culture, this vindictive realm of politics that we're participating in, is causing this massive divide among our constituents, among society, and it's very disheartening to see human beings lash out against each other. You have individuals on, I suppose, the Socialist Democratic side saying that all police are Derek Chauvin, that, the pigs that they need to die. But if ever you're trying to create a system that requires the eradication of other human beings, you're going to have a system that's built on blood. And historically, if your system that you're building is going to be built upon blood or the hatred of others, it will not succeed, because you will have hurt individuals, and the hurt and pain will live on in the individuals who are living, and they will want to tear down your system. It's this endless cycle, at least based upon my opinion. So, if you find yourself participating in outrage culture or reacting emotionally to whatever the world is pitching to you, just try to step back for a second and think to yourself, or recognize that a human being wrote this with a specific intention, and the reaction that you are having is probably the intention that they wrote it with, but it is marketing. They're trying to market a mood and a thought and a mentality, and if you adopt that mood, thought, and mentality, then you are participating in whatever it was that they wanted to create. And more often than not, what they're trying to create is views and wealth generation. It's not about bringing humans together. It's not about making society a better place. It's about making money and making more money, at least with the United States. That's why we have so many individuals selling out across the board in order to sustain the status quo. But alas, I don't want to judge the systems we have in place. I just highly encourage individuals to try and think independently, so that you do not sound like a little worker drone repeating the talking heads on television and the intelligent thoughts that they had, because I swear when I go on Twitter, I hear the exact same sentence said over and over and over again on both sides. It's like you have your talking head, and then you have the people filling the information what they said, and then people repeat that information over and over and over again. It's this endless cycle. And unless individuals are going to live based on their values, perhaps integrity, honesty, truth, forgiveness, grace, then we're going to be in a very sticky situation where all we can see is the bad in our counterparts and think that we are right. And that is a recipe for disaster. So, those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for tuning in. A little bit longer than usual, but I really care about how humans interact with each other. So, I want them to get along, I want them to listen, and I want them to recognize that their thoughts and opinions do not represent an absolute fact. And until they recognize that, they will continue to participate in interpersonal discourses that are toxic, damaging, gaslighting, whatever you want to call it. And they will be absolutely certain that it is right, which I personally think is wrong. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Doodles.